We have a story at Walt Disney World News Today that's very, very interesting. Walt Disney World News Today has previously been pretty good about championing certain causes and so forth when you have a certain group looking to unionize and maybe vote to strike and so forth, and this is no exception. I want to go ahead and bring it up right here, and especially with Ron, because, well, I know that Ron has worked as a waiter.
As everything?
Well, yes, he's done everything. But one of those jobs being a waiter at Walt Disney World. Here you go from WDWNT. Breaking Patina Group restaurant workers at Walt Disney World voting on possible strike. This by Standard Ace, August 26, 2025. Patina Group restaurant workers from EPCOT Italy Pavilion restaurants are voting to strike and have launched a website about Walt Disney World restaurant labor disputes. And looks like right here, Unite Here Local 737 and the Patina Group employees announced the strike authorization vote during a press conference on Tuesday after Patina Group, quote, failed to make adequate progress in contract negotiations. Patina Group, a subsidiary of Delaware North, owns and operates several Walt Disney World restaurants at Epcot and Disney Springs. In the Italy Pavilion, they operate Tutto Italia Ristorante, Tutto Gusto Wine Cellar, Via Napoli Ristorante e Pizzeria. The union contract for these venues expires on September 30th. The strike vote will authorize the bargaining committee to call a strike at any time after the contract expires. If the workers proceed with the strike, it will be the first time that employees have gone on strike inside the Walt Disney World theme parks. That's...
Wait, so they would actually be on strike in the park? That's allowed?
They aren't going to be able to demonstrate, I don't think, in the park, but to strike and not actually show up for work, maybe affecting the availability of these restaurants. I think that is a distinct possibility. The news website DisneyWorldFoodAlert.org provides an easy place for guests to check for labor disputes at Walt Disney World restaurants and check out restaurants with fair union contracts. Employees of Patina Group across Walt Disney World unionized last year amid what they called, quote, second-class working conditions, and they filed a formal complaint against the company this July. Whoa, this is some potentially big news right here. I did not realize this dispute had gone to such lengths at this moment and this juncture. But Ron, what's your first reaction to something like this? Do you think they have a case here? I haven't gone into the details of what they're asking for. I'm guessing it's pay, and I'm guessing it's a few things that could be shored up behind the scenes. But your thoughts on this particular story?
I have really negative thoughts when it comes to the union, which I was a part of, and I paid money into. And they did nothing at all for me at all. They, because of the union, there are certain procedures that have to happen that protect certain demographic groups within employment and not so much other demographic groups within employment. And I don't even want to go into details necessarily, but it's a DEI type of a thing. The unions love DEI, and these fights with negotiations and all this, they make you feel as an employee. They try to make you feel like you're coming out on the winning end of this thing. I don't know that they ever do, because they have a tendency to hurt business. So let me give you just an example from the restaurant that I worked at. I helped open a restaurant at Walt Disney World called Toledo Tapas Steaks and Seafood. It's at the top of the Grand Destino Tower. When we opened, and maybe we weren't necessarily getting the hourly rate that they're getting now. Okay. But when we opened, guess what? We were open 7 days a week in 2019, all the way through the shutdowns. When the reopenings happen and renegotiations happen, and the hourly pay for all the employees across the board went up. As a server, I think when I left, we were getting close to $9 an hour plus our tips, which is, a lot more above minimum wage for servers. And then the other people in the restaurant were getting 18. I think the cooks were starting off at like 22, 23 an hour. It was quite high. Guess how many days that restaurant is open per week now? It's 5. It's not 7. So less people can be employed. And the other thing I can tell you is that since all of that has happened, this is all based on union negotiations, and that's across Disney. It's not just with that restaurant. But that restaurant has never made a profit, no matter how well it does. And by the way, you can always check reservations for it. They're open almost any night that you want to go. They're not very well advertised, but there's other restaurants that happened since Disney has reopened, there are several locations that were always open 7 days a week and are only open 5. There are locations that took forever to reopen, like 1900 Park Fair. I think it took 3 or 4 years to reopen after the pandemic. It's across the board. What the employees don't realize is that it hurts business. So they act like, oh, well, we're not being treated fair, we're not making enough money, or this or that or the other. But the problem is that you're going to make less money if you don't have a job. So the quote unquote fair point has to be the point where the restaurant, which by the way, Patina Group pays 40% of their gross directly to Disney. Okay, so they have a monthly lease for each one of their locations for real estate. And then on top of that monthly lease, there's 40% of the gross. That's my understanding of their contracts. When I worked at Yak and Yeti, which was a third-party restaurant, that was my understanding that's one of the reasons why the prices are so high. And so think about the amount of money a group like Patina Group has to make to stay open and keep everybody employed. That's a very good point. It's difficult to do. And
those are some of the most popular restaurants in Epcot. Those Italian places, Via Napoli,
and I think I think they operate Space 220. I could be wrong, but
yes, I do believe you're correct right there.
Let me ask you real quick. My first thought when I had heard about this was these people, everyone that works at Tutto Italia and Via Napoli, with the exception of managers, they're all like here from Italy on work visas. So what happens if they stop working to strike? What happens to those visas at that point? Like, if you're not working, then are they just going to get sent back?
I don't think so. I mean,
I would assume not if they're going to go ahead with it. But like, I'm very curious as to how those Epcot work visas, how they work.
This is a very good point, actually. I would assume that because you are participating in labor practices that are sanctioned and legal, according to the United States, I don't think that would send you back. But that's a really good point right there, Marvin. I hadn't really thought about that. Look, I'll say this. Ron is right, and this is not just limited to Disney. This is involving a lot of major corporations, but Disney. I mean, since we're in this space, and I'll go ahead and give you an example. I mean, there used to be a series of puppeteers that used to do various shows around Disneyland and Disneyland Resort. Those puppeteers decided to unionize, and now we don't get any shows involving puppets anymore.
Nope.
I mean, that's kind of how that works.
We got one, and it was already a union show because it's Finding Nemo the musical, which is already Actors Equity Union.
That's a fair point. And then you look at the Hyperion Theater. From what I understand, there was a union dispute there as well, and now the Hyperion has been closed ever since Roger the Musical stepped off, and I think that was like 2 years ago. So and that's a 2,000-seat venue in Disney California Adventure, one of the space-strapped parks in all of existence. So it's like these things have natural consequences for sure. Culture, I'm guessing they're going to be striking for pay and all kinds of things. We've been seeing this so consistently across so many different, I would say, I don't want to generalize too harshly, but lower earning jobs and so forth. people are really hurting and they're trying to get all they can. Your thoughts on this particular story?
I don't think it's good for anybody, and I think that Patina Group needs to be fighting tooth and nail to get rid of unions. Look, union representation actually costs you in the end. In my experience, their actions to try to scrape every buck they can is I understand completely, but you would make more money if you weren't paying dues and other things associated with union work. It's the same in acting or anything else. So I'm just going to say this. They count on food and beverage more than anything else in Epcot. The executive chefs there and the person that's in charge of food and beverage for Disney World, it counts on the festivals and other events more so than anything else because they take Patina Group and the other restaurant operators that work within the Disney parks for granted. Because as Ron pointed out, they're paying a flat fee plus a percentage of earnings. I didn't realize it was as high as 40%. That's insane.
That's wild.
Yeah, but they're counting on, and this is something that I heard from the lips of one of these executives, my own self. They count on somewhere between a 12 and 14% growth rate year over year, which is why the portions for the festivals have gotten smaller and smaller, and the prices have gotten higher and higher. That's why you can always find in the Canadian Pavilion exactly the same food for every festival because it's a guaranteed budget item that they know what it costs to make and everything else. But
Land beer cheese soup.
yeah, well, and then you know what? It's not that different from the UK offerings either, but we'll get into that. Or the German pavilion's almost always the same thing. But
yeah,
regardless,
Belgian.
Yeah.
The festivals are now always the same thing. There's very little new food in the festivals. We've started to notice. That's why my wife and I don't even really go to the festivals as much anymore because we're like, we've had all this already.
Well, and that and the portions just get smaller, the offerings.
Oh yeah, and the prices go up. I have an answer about the visas and how that works. So participating in a lawful strike generally does not automatically affect your U.S. work visa status, as U.S. immigration law presents the right of international workers to participate in such activities. However, certain conditions, such as being unemployed for too long, or like under OPT for F1 students, or a denial of a visa extension or change petition due to an ongoing strike, can negatively impact your status. So it all depends on how long it goes on. It sounds to me like they let it go on for a little bit, and then they kick you out.
Yeah. Well, so Disney knows that, they just wait them out. Is that
well, I mean, Kanan Barnes. Yeah, Kanan Barnes talks about H-1B employees, and you know, all that. I just look at the total thing that's happening here, and I'm unsurprised. And I'm unsurprised that the workers don't understand that as a large corporation, Disney can wait them out. As a restaurant incubator, Patina Group will wait them out. You're
also in the middle of a theme park where there are umpteen million restaurants during the biggest food festival of the year when people have other options. This is the worst time ever for them to be like, well, we'll show you by closing down Tutto Italia.
That's a fair point.
Well, another thing to look at too, and I'm literally looking at the menu right now for Tutto Italia. How much is spaghetti and meatballs right now? Spaghetti and meatballs.
Tutto Italia, probably. I would say $29.
$29.
I was going to say $29.
Yeah, $29 for spaghetti and meatballs. Yeah. Guys, I mean, like, what is this going to do to their prices if? And I guarantee you, these union fights in Florida, I don't know why they seem to win. The unions seem to win, and these restaurants cave. And now your spaghetti and meatballs is $40.
Look, across property, there aren't a lot of restaurants worth the prices that you're paying. They just aren't. And ever since they've gone to the prefix menu in a lot of the hotel restaurants, I've been very disappointed. But again, it's a function of if you subcontract out your work for these locations, you're going to get what the creator of the food is going to be able to produce, on top of these incredibly high rental fees or space fees and these incredibly high, apparently, donations that you give from your restaurant in revenue. I'm still baffled at a 40% pull on something that you're not producing for Disney.
That's wild. But I've heard some crazy statistics like that as well. That's how I know Ron is accurate, because we've been waiting for a particular restaurant, Porto's, to make its way at downtown Disney at Disneyland Resort. And one of those was the kind of the revenue split right there. And I heard it was 40-50%. It's crazy. But
I think it's for you. When it comes to Disney food right now in Walt Disney World, I have actually found that it is better to go to Disney Springs restaurants than to go to the in-park restaurants, because I feel like the in-park restaurants have definitely got to take a dive. Whereas we recently ate at Haleo in Disney Springs and Planet Hollywood, and both of those were fantastic.
Fantastic stuff. Well, there's a lot of options out there. Just I think Marvin makes a great point right here. Strike with caution, of course.
Strike hard, strike fast, no mercy.
There you go. I love that.
High reference.
Thanks for watching That Park Plays News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.